This is the Paul McGUIRE Report. I'm Paul McGUIRE. On today's program, I want to dive deeper into the area of spiritual warfare and as it relates to culture, the political system, science, technology, economics, etc. Oh, and also media and theology. But the basic premise here on today's program is that, yes, God has given us very powerful, multi-dimensional spiritual weapons that you need to know how to use personally in your own life. You need to know how to use these spiritual weapons collectively in terms of intercessory prayer, praying for our nation, praying for our world. Why? Because these weapons work. They work. They deliver. It's not just enough to rely on traditional methods of doing things. You know, we have technology. Okay, that's great. We have science. That's great. I guess it's great. I'm not so sure about that. But in any case, that's not enough. There is a multi-dimensional nature to all of the reality that we live in. And when we are skilled, and this is a possibility for everybody listening, when you are skilled at spiritual warfare, you become far more than a mere observer of current events. You become an activator. You become a participant in current events. In fact, you can shape, to whatever degree God allows, you can shape the outcome of certain current events. But in order to do that, you have to, as the Lord was speaking to me in a prophetic dream on July 4th, 2025, I received from the Lord, and I'm always reluctant to talk about this because it sounds so, it has the potential of sounding, like bragging, and I'm not interested in doing that. I'm really not, but at the same time, I've got to be able to communicate. So the end game here is that you and I are caught up in the middle of a gigantic spiritual battle that began in the Garden of Eden. When Adam and Eve chose to disobey God's word, they were seduced by the serpent of old, that, by the way, may have had, in terms of his physical characteristics, a kind of dragon-like shape. So not only was the serpent of old an erect serpentine being that Lucifer inhabited, but this serpent-like being may have also appeared in a dragon-like form. And thus this is the reason why you see dragons as the symbols for so many kingdoms, for so many occult societies, for so many occult geographic areas. The dragon, like for example, if you see not the exterior city of London that all the tourists see, all the pictures you're going to see mostly of London are going to be the outer city of London. In fact, there are two distinct different cities of London. The outer city of London, where the Olympics were, and then there's the inner city of London, where all the international bankers live and the globalist elite live. And so when you're inside the city of London, separate from the exterior city of London, you can see in this second city of London, for example, Rothschild, one of the wealthiest families in the world. They have one of their headquarters inside the second city of London. And when you look at it, you can see all these walls and gates. And on top of these giant walls and gates are these huge and multi-sized golden and golden red sculptures of dragons. So you got to ask yourself the question, what in the heck is it about this obsession with dragons that it should be placed so prominently in the interior city of London? Well, why? Because the dragon is a symbol of Lucifer. It's the same serpent-like entity that seduced Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. So something to think about. So in learning how to step up our game, which was another message the Lord gave me in the prophetic dream of July 4th, 2025, that call to step up our game implied that the Lord was not satisfied with the level of skill and the level of expertise and the level of battlefield knowledge that his children were displaying upon the spiritual battlefield. And due to that, they were losing ground instead of fulfilling God's intention, which was to gain ground or occupy the land until he comes. That's the mandate. That's the command from the Lord God Almighty. He's saying to you, he's saying to me, he's saying to his children now at this very time, He's saying to us, step up your game. Start winning. Stop losing. And the only way you're going to do that is you're going to have to acquire the knowledge that gives you power. And you're going to have to become increasingly more sophisticated about how to use the multidimensional spiritual weapons I have given you. So we have to step up our game in terms of our skill in utilizing these multidimensional weapons. That requires at least a basic, you don't have to be the world's greatest expert about it, but you have to have at least a basic understanding, a basic working knowledge of the weaponry that is being used in all kinds of multidimensional battles raging on planet Earth right now as we speak. And that would include a key category that I've been dealing with for, well, quite a few years now, and I deal with it in my books. That is the entire category of electromagnetic frequencies. And once again, the basic axiom proclaimed by Einstein and other scientists is that everything that exists in our physical reality, everything, that includes you, me, every other person, it includes things like mountains and cars and foods, whatever it is that exists in our physical reality is the product of a specific numerical frequency. So it's kind of like we're living in a giant holograph. A holograph which projects its images from another dimension. It projects images that make people, things come alive in this physical reality dimension. So everything in the physical reality dimension, including ourselves and people around us, everything we can see or experience on any level is the direct result of a specific numerical electromagnetic frequency being transmitted to us from another dimension. As Albert Einstein, the great physicist, said, everything is frequency. Everything is frequency. So we have to know the basics of that. Because you see, power from on high, which is the Spirit of the Lord, infused in his people, is battling on a multiple dimension basis. It's battling all kinds of different frequencies of power. Yet power from on high, the dunamis power of the Holy Spirit, is actually more powerful than any competing force or frequency. But in order for that power to be made available in the earth, it has to be operated in the way that God instructs us to operate it, and it has to line up or synchronize with the precise frequency that God invented when he created, for example, the color blue. The color blue is a specific electromagnetic frequency. If you take every color in the traditional color wheel, every color originates from a specific numerical electromagnetic frequency. So if we go yellow or blue or green or brown or black or white, every one of those, or red, every one of those is a manifestation of a specific electromagnetic frequency. So when we enter the dimension of spiritual warfare, everything around us that we're dealing with is literally being beamed in from another dimension, the dimension of its origination, like a holograph. It's being beamed in to our physical reality dimension, where it takes up a shape, a color, an ambience of its own. And once you really understand that, and once you can begin to connect that with the spiritual battle that we're all in, you will have taken a quantum leap, no pun intended, but it's actually an offshoot of quantum physics and quantum mechanics. So the statement, you will have taken a quantum leap, was not intended to be a pun, but it actually bears truth. So as we become more knowledgeable and more skilled in using the weapons of our warfare that are mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds, then we become the victors. Then we become victorious. It is not the will, listen to me very carefully, please. It is not the will of God that his people become subjugated, that his people are held captive, that his people are dominated or subdued or enslaved. That is not, it has never been the will of God for that to happen. That only happens when God's people deny his power, disobey his orders, or meet his power with unbelief. So those various descriptions of captivity and slavery are always the result of bad choices made by his people. And so we don't want to duplicate those mistakes. We want to stay true to the Word of God. Now, the first thing we have to do is understand that, for crying out loud, you and I are in, right now, it's not an opinion, it's not a conspiracy theory, it's a fact. You and I are in the middle of the greatest spiritual battle for the hearts and minds of mankind in the history of the world. And that battle consists of a massive conflict of technologies, a massive conflict of ideas and belief systems, a massive conflict of ideologies, a massive conflict of entities, beings, angels, people, God versus Satan, and an entire spectrum of opposing powers battling it out for the control of the world that God created in order to release the world and to release his people to both live in a world as he created it and release his people to be the divinely inspired people he designed them to be. He created them to be from the beginning. Okay, you're listening to the Paul McGuire Report. This is Paul McGuire. Stay with us. We'll be back in just a second, and we're going to talk more about how you can overcome in your own life and how you, no matter what you may think now, you can play a critical role in the outcome of the great spiritual battle that we're in. Nobody listening is useless. Nobody listening is an add-on. You may think, in the case of a mistaken identity, you may think that you're irrelevant. You may think that you're disposable. And that would then tempt you to be depressed and excessively introspective. And even in a worst case scenario, you could be saying to yourself, well, what good am I? I mean, my life doesn't matter. I'm not really helping anybody. But let me tell you this in love. If you're toying with those thoughts, you're toying with dynamite. Because the false belief, and it is a false belief, the false belief that you don't matter and that your life doesn't matter can only lead to a spiraling down into kind of a nothingness and self-depreciation. You must recognize with spiritual discernment that when you think thoughts like that, thoughts that totally marginalize you, you are succumbing, whether you know it or not, you're succumbing to the psyop strategy of the evil one, who wants to convince you of a lie. And the lie is basically this, that he attempts to embed in your soul. He's trying to embed in you a lie that your life means nothing. You're not really making any change in the world, even your own world. And then he continues on, and your life is essentially useless, he would continue on, because his end game is to destroy you, to obliterate you. But he can only obliterate you to the degree that he convinces you that the lies that he's trying to embed in your personality, to the degree he can convince you that the lies he's trying to embed in your personality are true, he will be victorious or successful. But if he is being stopped and blocked the moment he tries to gain entrance, the moment he tries to spill out his spell of words and deception, if you checkmate him before he pursues any further, you can stop him in his tracks. And when you stop him in his tracks, it is you that apprehends him. It is you that conquers him. And then you are victorious in the great spiritual battle. Okay, this is Paul McGuire. Visit paulmcguire.us. We will be back in just a minute. You are listening to the Paul McGuire Report. This is Paul McGuire. Okay, so there are all kinds of frequencies. You already know that. There's the frequency of musical sounds, voices. There's the frequency of light, the frequency of colors. There's the electromagnetic frequency, radiation frequencies, auditory sound frequencies, laser frequencies, radar frequencies. I mean, you could go on and on and on. There's all kinds of frequencies. And they're moving through our bodies and they're moving through our planets. Basically, all this occurred because prior to the invention of radio and radio waves, the concept of frequencies was relatively unknown. Not totally unknown, but relatively unknown. So when radio was invented, they say Marconi invented radio. I suspect it was really Nikola Tesla who invented radio. So for the last 150 years or more, we've had radio frequencies. Now, when you go back and you take a look at ancient Egypt and the Great Pyramids of ancient Egypt. And with recent discoveries of the massive technology and massive underground cities recently discovered under the ancient pyramids, it's opened a whole new panorama of understanding. And one of the things that scientists discovered when they began researching these new massive technologies built under the ancient pyramids was that they all operated at a particular frequency. And what they used these frequencies for, it's merely theoretical. Some believed they applied the frequencies to the moving and lifting up of giant stones that built the pyramids. Some people believe that they actually were able to lift up entire pyramids and move them as a whole entity. And there are massive tunnels and underground cities, a network of massive underground cities under the territories where the ancient pyramids are. And so the technology, or should I say, the technologies of the ancient pyramids, they operated on a particular frequency. And that frequency is 7.83 hertz, also known as the Schumann frequency, because it was Dr. Schumann or Professor Schumann who discovered the reality of the 7.83 hertz frequency. But also, according to Dr. Schumann's research, planet Earth itself, this ball that we're living on, spinning in the universe, the frequency of planet Earth, because planet Earth emits a steady frequency. The steady emitting frequency of planet Earth, again, is 7.83 hertz. The Schumann frequency, also known as the Earth's frequency. So the Earth's frequency, discovered by Dr. Schumann, is 7.83 hertz. Now, this remarkable frequency consists in a range of frequencies known as theta wave frequencies. So 7.83 hertz is a theta wave frequency. It's just interesting to know that because there's a lot of secrets hidden in the knowledge of the 7.83 hertz frequency. It's not some frivolous thing to understand. It's a part of the keys of opening up the knowledge and power of the universe as God has created it. Another thing that should be noted is that Adolf Hitler and his scientists met with great musicians, and they were instrumental in taking I don't know what the exact musical term is. Some of you who are into music deeper than I am would know what this term is. But there's a frequency of music by which all other frequencies are tuned from. And this frequency was changed by the Nazis, the Nazi scientists, along with others, the Rothschilds. This frequency was changed to a more negative, militaristic, to put it bluntly, a more evil resonance. And it wasn't up until relatively recently that people have attempted to fight back from this negative frequency dominating planet Earth. People promoting the 528 hertz frequency known as the love frequency. And by love, it's a spiritual love frequency. The 528 hertz frequency, popularized by Dr. Leonard Horowitz. 528 hertz frequency is the love and miracles frequency, spiritual. It's a spiritual love. And it brings healing and love. And each frequencies can resonate death, destruction, disease, anxiety, suicide, demonic portals. Frequencies can do all that. But frequencies can also become doorways for healing, for blessing, for driving out different diseases. And so they have found that when you stop getting rid of the unnatural frequencies all around us, and you allow a person's body and mind to soak in, for example, healing frequencies like the 7.83 hertz healing frequency, the Earth's frequency, also known as the Schumann frequency, it brings about healing. Also, when you listen to the 528 hertz love frequency, miracle frequency, that also brings healing and opens the door for miracles and other things. So frequencies are not just, arbitrary frequencies. Frequencies are everything. So the 7.83 hertz frequency, the Schumann frequency, is also, and also known as the Earth's frequency, is also the exact same frequency that is found in the ancient technologies discovered under the massive Egyptian pyramids and used in the technology hidden inside or deep below the pyramids. Those frequencies are operating at 7.83 hertz. So as we dig deeper in that, you're going to discover that's a key to unlocking enormous amounts of spiritual power. Now, like I said, I've seen videos of it. They're not hidden anywhere. They're on the internet. I've seen videos of military soldiers, including American military soldiers, exercising crowd control at demonstrations. When the demonstration starts to become violent or dangerous, or people are shooting guns and bad things are starting to happen, our military can drive up a Jeep, a relatively small Jeep or a large Jeep or any number of vehicles. And on these military vehicles, there's it looks like a large flat TV screen, except it's made out of metals and it's painted with green paint or, military camouflage paint. And these giant television screen-like devices, again, not made with glass and plastic, but metal, they can be aimed from the vehicle into a crowd and very specifically lock into a specific person, a group of people at whatever distance or height and whatever magnification of intensity of signal they want to send out. Now, the usual practice in America is they send out a warning frequency, which is like a blast of very hot heat to disperse a crowd. If the crowd won't, back off, they'll turn up the frequency so it's like very, very hot, very unpleasant, very uncomfortable heat blast, except it's fired at the troublemakers from a frequency vehicle, Jeep or whatever. And you see pictures of crowds and angry demonstrators as they are invisibly hit. They don't even know what's going to come, as they are invisibly hit by these they're called frequency non-lethal weapons, which you don't have to be a super genius to figure out that if they've labeled their own arsenal as non-lethal frequencies, then you can figure it out that they also have a secret category that might be called lethal or deadly frequencies, where the goal is not to stun or the goal is not to warn, but the goal is to cause somebody to drop dead from a heart attack or any number of death-dealing frequencies. This is where you got to, like what the Lord was communicating to me in the prophetic dream I had on July 4th, 2025. He gave me a lot of information, but he said to me, communicate to my people that they need to step up their game. He was talking about a lot of things, but it included a basic awareness of the nature of modern warfare, both spiritual, multidimensional, and physical warfare, knowing what weapons are being employed against us, and knowing, most of all, how do you protect yourself? How do you keep yourself from being infiltrated and conquered by weapons that you falsely relegated into the category of fantasy weapons or the category of science fiction weapons? In other words, you falsely assumed, because you, in your limited, finite brain, you didn't believe that these weapons could possibly exist. Therefore, you acted on that false belief and got yourself and the body of Christ into big trouble because you went around saying, oh, it's just a conspiracy theory, when in fact it was never a conspiracy theory. It was a bottom line truth, but you were too stupid, sorry to be so blunt, you were too stupid to get it. And therefore, the equivalent of running into the battlefield naked applies to you. It's not a conspiracy. These things exist. If you had done your homework, aka step up your game, if you had done your homework, you would know that these technologies have been up and running since the 1920s. Just today, as I was researching for today's program, I was going through the career of a hideous monster of a doctor in psychological warfare and psyops and MK Ultra, and this guy was a monster. Dr. Jose Delgado. He would put chips in bowls and cause the wireless remote control to be aimed at a bull in a bull ring. And when they zapped the bull with an uncomfortable frequency, the bull would come at the person in the bull ring. I forgot what you call that person. Anyway, the bull would charge that person, activated by an EMF frequency that was, the receiver was a small microchip implant placed inside the brain or the body of the bull. This was in the 1920s, for crying out loud. So wake up and smell the coffee. Okay, let's dive deeper. Let's look at what's really happening. Okay, once again, this is Paul McGUIRE. In 2013, I published a book entitled A Prophecy of the Future of America, Volume 1. The follow-up to that was A Prophecy of the Future of America, Volume 2. But in Volume 1, this book, which is a thick book, but it's power-packed, and it's about 300 pages, and it ripples through you like a lightning bolt of God's divine power. I'm serious, this thing is fully loaded. And this book and the contents and the message of this book literally reached, as a message of prophetic warning and prophetic hope, this book reached millions of people, easily in excess of 5 to 6 million people, because all of the media platforms at that moment in time had not yet implemented their dictatorial Orwellian Brave New World censorship rulership of the internet and media. So for a brief period of time, there were open windows for people like me to blast away with the truth. And during this period of time, myself and a number of others, it wasn't that many of us, we were educating, we were discipling, we were training a whole several new generations of future leaders, many of them who are in the most powerful positions as the leaders of alternative media. Back in 2013 and many years afterwards, they didn't know anything about anything. Most of these people just converted over to what we've been talking about for decades. Most of these people just converted over in the last, if I'm generous, in the last 5 years. Many of them just found out what was really happening in the last 2 years or 3 years. I'm talking about the biggest names in alternative media. But they were educated and spoon-fed information by people like me and not that many others. So I consider this book coming out at a pivotal time, because it changed, I believe, that it changed significantly the direction of the future of America. And it didn't end the battle. The battle's still raging, but it made significant impact. And the first thing, which is still a primary battlefield, is that people, so many of the people you know and interact with, they don't have a clue, even though we have given them massive documentation. They don't have a clue about what's really going on. I'm just going to read you some things out of my book, A Prophecy of the Future of America, because this is what we're battling to get people to understand and know. So I remember when I started out doing this, and it was way before 2013. Most of the time when I would talk about the Illuminati, people would go like crazy, ballistic on me. They would accuse me of being a conspiracy theorist and, oh, the Illuminati is just a conspiracy. I had one Christian publisher, at least he was honest enough. Troy and I wrote a book called The Babylon Code. And one of the early publishers and editors was skeptical and challenged us. He said he didn't believe that the Illuminati was still existed. But at least he was humble enough and honest enough when we presented to him the facts that, yes, the Illuminati is alive and well. He changed his mind. So I give him credit for that. But you and I meet people all the time who are stuck in a brainwashing circuit mode of, they still think, this is such a ridiculous belief system. You have to be an airhead personified. You have to be an airhead on steroids to believe that the Illuminati is a conspiracy theory. What toilet plunger are you hanging out under with your snorkel? I know that's crude and rude, but it just came to my mind and I felt like saying it. So I apologize if it was rather bizarre, but it is what it is. Okay. In the chapter of my book, and this is 2013, Prophecy of the Future of America, the Illuminati scientific elite plan for destroying the earth. That's not a conspiracy theory. That has been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Now, obviously, the Illuminati changes its name on a regular basis, but it doesn't mean the Illuminati has disappeared. They change their name, or they have offshoots of the Illuminati. So when I say the Illuminati scientific elite plan for destroying the earth, that has been around for a long time, and it's still going now. But you and I are talking to people every day who are totally clueless. Then I write, the idea of a scientific elite that rules the world goes all the way back to Atlantis and the philosopher Plato, who supposedly got many of his ideas from Atlantis. Atlantis was ruled by about 12 godmen who were the elite and made all decisions. Plato called for a small number of philosopher kings, or godmen, to rule the world. Similar views were advocated by the Fabian socialists in the late 1800s and early 1920s in England. H.G. Wells mapped out a plan for a ruling scientific elite. That ruling scientific elite is still in existence now. They are the ones attempting to dominate planet Earth. You know what? I wasn't going to do this, but I am going to do it. Because I want you to hear this elite in their own words, say in their own words, their open plan for domination of planet Earth. I want you to hear it. It's no conspiracy theory. So I'm going to play you a few minutes of audio of the people behind this dark plan. I'm talking about the Great Reset. The Great Reset, which is what they now call it, but formerly it was called the New World Order. I'm going to play for you the actual words from the guys, the leaders, the male and females themselves, of what they're planning to do. They're not hiding this. I didn't find this on some obscure website. It's out in the mainstream. They're telling you what they're going to do. They have some kind of spiritual or intellectual belief that they have some kind of responsibility to tell you or communicate to you what they're going to do, no matter how evil. They have some kind of belief system which obligates them to tell you in advance of what they're going to do. So they're doing that. Now, if you just chuck that away, or if you just decide to ignore what they're telling you they're going to do, then in their belief system, it's totally on you. If you choose to disbelieve their words of warning, the people that are doing it, then in their belief system, when the bad stuff comes down hot and heavy, it's your problem. You created it. You activated in their belief system. You activated the hellish outpouring because you chose to ignore their clear warning where they told you up front, they didn't hide mostly anything, what they're going to do. So let's go to that, because I think it's going to be a real powerful education that I'm trying to let you hear this so you can be effective in your communication to others, because I'm tired of, this battle that we're in. It's going to be fought on a one-to-one level, where, your friends, your family, your relatives, during the holidays, you meet people and stuff. When it's strategic, when the door is open, only when the Lord is definitely leading you to speak, only when you know what you're talking about, only when you move through the door strategically. That's all the basic outline of the rules. You don't speak if you don't know what you're talking about. You don't just jump through a door just because there's a door there. The door has to be open, and you have to know that it's God prompting you to say something, and then shut up when he tells you to shut up. I can't tell you how many times I listen to somebody who's anointed with the Holy Spirit. God's moving on them. They're saying something that's true, and I can feel it in my spirit that what they're saying is right and true, but then you can feel it. Most of you know what I'm talking about. At a certain point, you can sense the Lord saying, okay, put a period to it. End it. You can feel it in your spirit. It's time to end it. You said a great thing. You planted great seeds in somebody's heart. Now shut it off. But they get caught up in the exuberance, and they ignore the Lord, and they keep going on past the point when they should have put a period to it. And then they start to bore people. People get fidgety, and they're missing the big clue that the Lord told them about 4 minutes ago to end it, shut up, and put a period on it. But because of their immaturity, they keep going. And sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes they undo what they did, because instead of leaving on a victory note, they leave on a, oh my God, what is this lady talking about note? You know what I'm saying? And the same applies to men. Okay, Hang in there. I'm going to get this audio from a video. I want you to hear what these people are saying. And then I think that will freshly inspire you to own the truth and to say, you know what? I'm not going to allow these punks to take over my nation, my family, and this world. Punk is a good name for them. I could use a lot worse, but they're punks. A punk is somebody who's really a brat. You know, usually it's a younger person like preteens or whatever. And a punk is somebody who aspires to be male or female, a lot bigger and a lot more important than they are. So they pretend that they're something. But in reality, it's just a shell. They're punks. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I know you do. This is Paul McGUIRE. Visit paulmcguire.us. We will be back in just a moment. Okay. What I want to do for you is play some audio clips of the leaders and the intellectual thinkers behind the Great Reset, which you and I and everybody you know is being seriously impacted by now. All kinds of things are happening that if you know the facts, you're able to assemble in your mind a coherent picture of what's happening. Let me just give you a super fast case in point. We had here in Southern California, not all that long ago, relatively recently ago, massive fires in the Malibu, Pacific Palisades area and other areas, up in my area too. Massive fires. Now, I've heard that there's a whole wasteland right now of the leftover, it looks like a World War II city that was bombed to smithereens. So there's dust, there's the bulldozing of structures, there's burnout stuff everywhere, and supposedly there's only one house that has been built. So I don't know what the total number of houses were in the Pacific Palisades, Malibu area, but for whatever reason, there has not been the rapid rebuilding as promised. Now, I'm not saying the following as a fact, although I pretty much think that it is a fact, but I'm giving myself some wiggle room here. What I have heard, and the delay in the building seems to reinforce this, what I've heard is that there secretly is behind this thing. First of all, you got to ask yourself the outrageously obvious question that anybody that has a molecule of a working brain would ask themselves. What caused these massive fires in Malibu, Pacific Palisades and other areas? What caused the fires? Winds? Oh, give me a break. Dry heat? Give me a break. A fire? Sparks? Give me a break. Those kind of things have happened forever in California. They didn't torch the entire geographic areas, which is what happened now. No. There are all these reports, and when you see the video evidence, you see the photographic evidence, and I've seen some pretty close-up videos live from that inferno. It appears, due to the uncanny level of heat, I'm talking about when the water is boiling in your water pipes, you know, a foot or two or more beneath the soil surface. You can hear the pipes boiling days after because the heat has been so high that the water's boiling in the pipes, even though the property is leveled. There may be, you know, the remains of a fireplace, maybe. So this is like death from above type weaponry. So what is it? It smells like directed energy weapons. For those that are asleep around you, directed energy weapons were built in the 1920s, the 1940s. This is not a new technology. You got it? So when people can't believe it because they don't believe the technology is possible. So because they're programmed pigeons, when you try to tell them the truth that this is the result of directed energy weapons, commonly known as DEWs, D-E-W-S, these fires are the result of directed energy weapons. They give you that glazed over in the eyes look, and they don't believe it because that's a conspiracy theory. Well, look, give me a break. The weaponry has been around technologically, like I said, since the 1920s, 1940s. And I've seen the comparative photos of even the hottest fires versus directed energy weapon fires. And in perusing on the internet, I found a full-page display from one of the biggest, probably the top 3 weapons manufacturers, international corporations in the world. This massive weapons corporation, okay, I'm not naming its name on purpose. On the front page of a relatively recent magazine article, and it's the official magazine of this giant weapons manufacturing conglomerate. The cover story on the front page of their magazine was directed energy. I don't know whether they called it technology or weapons. I think they called it directed energy weapons. In any case, what they were displaying on the cover of their magazine that goes out to all the corporations and politicians and everything else, they were selling on the open market. They were selling the directed energy weapon technology. Now, of course, everything they listed and the words they chose made it sound relatively benign. But if this giant weapons conglomerate corporation can openly advertise the existence of directed energy weapons and sell it openly on the market, why are you such a space cadet and you can't get your brain to believe that this stuff is real? Okay, so that's what I'm talking about. So what I've heard is that the purpose, and this part, there's no question that the magazine of this giant weapons manufacturer was real and that they sell the weapons. No question at all. As to the timing of the restoration of the leveling of massive numbers of buildings, I have heard that it is part, and this is not just from one source, it's from multiple sources. I have heard that this is part of the United Nations 2030 agenda, specifically the part of the agenda that promotes what they call, the UN calls, 15-minute cities. That they can build an entire little community or 15-minute city. And they sell it like, oh, it's going to be so desirable. You think that these high-rolling movie stars and movers and shakers and the people that have mansions in Beverly Hills and Malibu, you think they're going to be happy with a 15-minute city? I don't think so. So the 15-minute city, this is what the UN wants to push everybody to live in, specifically the middle class, the working class, and even up above that. They want to push everybody to live in 15-minute cities, which are essentially high-rise apartments. But they're not upper-level apartments. They're lower-level apartments. Now, I've lived in apartments. We lived in a wonderful apartment when I was a kid growing up because it was built, it was built originally in the 20s, and it had gardens and huge space. There were 4 or 5 bedrooms in the apartment. The walls were soundproof. There were all kinds of amenities. But it was built in the 1920s for high rollers who had their businesses in Manhattan, and they could have their spacious apartments here with an awesome view. And yet time went on, and most of the neighborhood went middle class. The people that lived in these buildings were middle class, like we were. But the apartment that my family lived in was spectacular. They don't make apartments like that anymore. That's not what the UN has in mind for you and me, spacious, wonderful apartments. They have in mind for you and me, think of a cheap or semi-cheap motel. Thin walls, cheap furniture, crowded together, no gardens, nothing, it's just like you're surviving. Not you're living, you're like surviving. That's what the UN has in mind for you. 2 sets of plans, one plan for the elite and one plan for you. So the 15-minute city, they use the crisis of the fire as an excuse. They delay, theoretically, hypothetically, they're delaying the rebuilding of all the houses because they're getting near crunch time with the Olympics coming up off in the future for LA. And they would like to have enough acreage. They'd like to have enough space to build all these extra buildings for the UN and extra stadiums for the UN. And they want enough space to build extra housing and building for the UN. But you see, there's an ulterior motive behind the Olympics, an ulterior motive. The ulterior motive is, if there was no land to build all the stuff they wanted to build to have I believe it's it is the Summer Olympics. There wasn't enough space. But now there's plenty of space because countless numbers of acres have been burnt down to a crisp, and they're not rebuilding conspicuously. So if they don't rebuild, the pressure is going to be turned up to deliver. They can make up any kind of excuse they want. And all of a sudden, the 15-minute city will mysteriously appear as this golden solution
They're going to sell people this palatial vision based on a lie of the 15-minute cities being charming, etc. And the next thing you know, you've replaced beautiful landscapes, beautiful houses, mansions. You've replaced all of that with a bare bones, but superficially attractive living place and Olympic Stadium place. But it's not, it's a great place to stay temporarily, but you wouldn't want to live there. They'll turn that into a 15-minute city. And remember, what's the purpose? What's the real purpose of the 15-minute city? The selling point is we got to save the planet for energy, blah, 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 blah. Those are all lies. The elite, the globalist elite, the Great Reset people, the people that are behind this Luciferian plan for America and planet Earth, they're going to continue to have multiple giant mansions. They're going to continue to have multiple acreages, private ranches, private farms like they have now. You just look up, for example, Steven Spielberg's real estate holdings, or you look up on any big shots real estate holdings. The guy has not only multiple palatial mansions, but he has multiple structures all around the world, including an entire series of, it looks like a remote farmhouse in the middle of absolutely nowhere. There's no major roads or anything. There's Spielberg's house, one of his many, many houses. And the only thing that's of note is that if you wanted to get away from it all and live under the radar, this is a perfect place you could fly to because it has farm acreage all around it. Now, why does he own all these strange structures? Well, I think you can hypothetically guess why. But the point is, he owns many mansions and many structures all over the place. And so you can go down the list of the super billionaires, etc. Okay, so the 15-minute city is a hoodwink program to round up the middle class, the working middle class or whatever, put them into like a quarantine zone for total control. And with biochips, etc., you're not, depending upon what your social credit score will look like, you won't be able to drive out of the 15-minute city. If you bicycle or attempt to walk or jog out of the 15-minute city, you have to be within a certain number of feet, walking distance. You're not allowed to just take off and drive to another neighborhood or go wherever you want. You're restricted. You understand? You're under the thumb of somebody. It's total control of your life. That's what the 15-minute city is all about. Now, when you look into the history of the people behind this, they have no qualms whatsoever about doing the most outrageously evil acts on a mass level to accomplish their agenda. Get that fixed in your brain real good, because their agenda is dark and evil. And if you doubt the fact that that they are in the process of carrying it out, just look at the history of them and their families and look at what they've done in the past, and that should be a clear indicator to you what they're capable of doing in the present. Okay, so let's listen to some of the remarks made by some of these Great Reset leaders. Okay, the first guy we're going to hear from is a guy you've probably heard of, Yuval Noah Harari, who's like the intellectual leader and thinker of the Great Reset. He's like the intellectual philosophical leader of the World Economic Forum. The World Economic Forum, WEF, is one of the most powerful groups that's facilitating this global takeover. So I want you to listen carefully to his comments about how they intend to put a microscopic chip implant in your body, and they will be able to access your brain from a computer. So it's like a telepathic link or communication system between you and your brain, a wireless communication system that connects to a computer or some other system. So you're going to be under the control. You won't even have the privacy of your interior mind. Listen carefully to what he's saying. Listen carefully about how he talks about what this technology can do. And I think you'll find it, eye-opening to say the least. Okay, so let's listen to Yuval Noah Harari, okay?
Have a good two-way communication system directly between brains and computers. It also means you can connect several brains together to create an inter-brain net because it's the same system, the same communication system. And nobody has any idea what this means for things like identity.
So what Harari is talking about is, as he goes on to explain this, all the people around will be forced to have this technology placed in their bodies, and they will be connected to one another and connected to like a global brain, a hive mind, a world brain. And then Harari points out the challenge that how will people be able to have their individual identities if they're all one because they're plugged into a common AI computer brain known as a hive mind or a world brain? Well, obviously, Harari may not come out and tell you the truth, but the answer is obvious. You will have no privacy. I mean, I think it was President Clinton who said years ago that President Clinton said that Americans do not have a reasonable right to privacy. And there was a marginal uproar. But when Clinton said that, he was directly in opposition with the freedoms guaranteed to us by our founding fathers, where we have freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of religion, and we have the right to privacy, and we have a right to not having our personal things undergo search and seizure, either electronically or, in terms of papers or files or whatever. Our Constitution, our Bill of Rights guarantees us in specific language a very real right to privacy. So when Clinton spouts this verbosity out of his mouth, he's lying. And he takes advantage of the dummies out there who are in a state of being brainwashed. This guy and the globalists like him, Yuval Harari, he's continuing on this theme. He's telling you, he's not asking for your permission. You're going to get this whether you want it or not. He's telling you, we're going to embed your body and brain with a nanochip implant. Oh, guess what, folks? I hate to break the news to you. I've been trying to tell you this for a long time. Some of you and some of the people you know already have what I'm speaking about. It's already there. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah, you do understand what I'm saying. And it shouldn't be. But the reason it happened was nobody cared enough to stand up and, in a law-abiding, intelligent, rational, but persistent way, ask with a firmness that our rights, our fundamental rights, be protected. You see, these people are doing an illegal takeover, and they're getting away with it because so many of our politicians on both sides of the political spectrum are on the take. They're having their pockets lined. That's why this program, which is so unpopular, continues to move forward. So let's look at it some more. Okay, let's go back to Harari of the World Economic Forum and listen to more of the plans they have for your life. And they're not asking you for your permission. They're just seizing it. Cold, cruel, brutal. They're just seizing control of your inner man or inner woman. Wake up, man. Really, wake up. What do you think this world's going to be like should the Lord tarry? Don't tell me you're not worrying about it because Jesus is coming. Because you don't know when Jesus is coming, and neither do I, and neither does any person who lives on planet Earth. Even Jesus couldn't tell his disciples precisely when he was coming because he told his disciples, only our Father who is in heaven knows the timing. So you don't turn the Bible into a cop-out. Jesus said, occupy until he comes. Okay, it's really simple. The question is, are you going to obey the word of the Lord? Okay, let's play some more of Harari's statements. Let's go right to the mouth of the beast.
With especially the rise of brain-computer interfaces and biometric sensors and so forth, it is very likely that within, say, 50 years, people will literally be part of a network. All the bodies, all the brains would be connected together to a network, and you won't be able to survive if you're disconnected from the net, because your own body parts, your own immune system, perhaps depends on being constantly connected to the colony.
Constantly connected to the colony. Listen to the words, the choice of words that he uses. This plan by the World Economic Forum / the United Nations, the globalist elite, Harari, the Great Reset people. When you decode this plan in simple terms, it is an obscenity beyond belief. It is a horror movie
beyond any horror movie made by a director. This is doing the most egregious violence to what men and women are. And the fact that a personal living God of the universe created every man and woman. Mankind, both male and female, according to God's word in the book of Genesis, where it says, in the image of God, he, who's he? God. In the image of God, he created them, both male and female. So the very fact that God created a biological, supernatural template for all of mankind, all of us as authentic genetic human beings have been created in the image of God, both male and female. I mean, there's a lot of deep truth just in that statement. And so this punk, and I'm being kind, by the way, I'm being very kind. This punk and his fellow punks is overruling all of that with this unbelievable pipsqueak arrogance and telling you, he's not asking permission. He's telling you that you're not going to be able to eat, buy, or sell. Does that sound familiar to you, by the way? That you're not going to, he's used the word survive. You're not going to be able to survive. He was talking about food, clothing, shelter, and the other stuff. Where have we heard that before? What spirit is this of? I'll tell you what spirit it is of. It's of the spirit of the Antichrist. How do I know that? Let me read something to you that I know you're familiar with. And I pray that it will open up your eyes further to the devious nature. I'm going to read you some verses from the Bible, the New King James Version, Spirit-Filled Life Bible for Students, which I had the privilege of writing a sizable amount of the notes from Genesis to Revelation and Greek, Hebrew, and Latin translations. So in Revelation 13, starting at verse 11, it says, then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb and spoke like a dragon. Okay, you're familiar with that. I know you are. So we have the beast, the Antichrist, and the false prophet. And then it says, this is heavy duty, man. I'm telling you, this is so heavy duty, it just blows my mind to read it now. I'm going to start at verse 14. He, the false prophet, he performs great signs so that he even makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. Now, I wasn't going to even read this verse, but it's just blowing up in my mind. He's calling down fire from heaven. What could that be? Well, it could be all kinds of things. Potentially, it could be a manifestation of the secret program that I've documented heavily in my books, like A Prophecy of the Future of America. What I'm talking about, it could be the technology called Operation Bluebeam, where they used advanced technology to counterfeit all kinds of stuff so it looks so lifelike, so real, nobody will question its validity. It's like a holographic beam in the heavens. And this, by the way, Operation Bluebeam, is in the Central Intelligence Agency's documents. I didn't make this up. It's a plan to simulate either an alien invasion or the second coming of Jesus Christ, or any number of things. And they can simulate it with technology. So we read that, and that's just something to think about. We've talked about it, especially in light of the fact that everybody's ramping up this alien disclosure, this UFO disclosure thing. So that even Spielberg, as I mentioned the other day, the director Steven Spielberg released the trailer to his upcoming movie, Alien Disclosure, which is going to open up in, I believe, the summer. And Alien Disclosure is all about, I mean, the trailer is disturbing. I thought it was good. I think if you can handle it, you should look at it, because it very powerfully captured what appears to be an alien speaking out of a female newscaster's body live during some kind of press conference. And it's very eerie. But you see, you got to dig deeper than that. When you're watching, I believe that Spielberg has cooperated either intentionally or unintentionally. I believe he's cooperated with MK Ultra in the media. Yeah, I do. Because he keeps popping up with these MK Ultra type feature films. It's been a while. So in this particular film, he's releasing Disclosure Day in the very time period where all the disclosure events, the demand for disclosure regarding UFOs, is at an all-time high. Now, you could say he's just capitalizing on the market. That's true. You could say that.
But it begs the question, for crying out loud. And so let's read what happens after people see whatever it is they're seeing, fire being called down from heaven into the earth. Verse 14, and he deceives those who dwell on the earth by those signs which he was granted to do in the sight of the beast, the Antichrist, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who was wounded by the sword and lived. He was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. So if you don't worship the image of the beast who died and is brought to life again, that's a lot of clues there. If you don't worship the image of the beast as you're commanded to, you will be killed according to Scripture. Okay? And by the way, back to the lady who's speaking, the famous actress, I think her name is Emily Blunt, and she starred in a sci-fi movie starring Tom Cruise. So she plays this female newscaster where it appears this entity or something mysterious is speaking out of her biological body. And it conveys on a subliminal level, not a conscious level. There's a secondary communication that those of you that are critical thinkers will at least be able to evaluate. And that is, there seems to be a subliminal message regarding speaking in tongues. And I'm sure more will unfold, but that's deliberately there. There's no way you can miss that unless you're brain dead. Okay. He was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should not, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is a number of a man. His number is 666. Okay, so clearly Revelation is telling us about a soon coming future time where the Antichrist will rise to power, demand that he be worshipped by the people as God. He will be empowered by the false prophet, and a key part of their takeover is the fact that they're going to weaponize the technology of the microchip implant. And now what has gone beyond the technology of the microchip implant is the brand new technology of the even more microscopic, very, very tiny, miniature, microscopic nanochip implant that can only be seen by a powerful electron microscope and self-evolves inside the human body. Now, Harari is aware of all of this. And if you don't go with the program, he said, you're not going to survive. That was polite for you'll be killed. When Harari says you will not survive without allowing yourself to be linked up or to the colony world brain or hive mind or whatever you want to call it, that was a polite metaphor for you will be killed if you don't join the club. You got it? Okay. And then you won't be allowed to enter into the economic system. You won't be allowed to buy or sell unless you receive the mark of the beast. Now, don't get hung up. People get hung up over important things, but they need to think bigger. They need to think outside of the box. Don't get hung up about, well, it says it's on your right hand or your forehead. Well, it could be it could be a microscopic nanochip put within the layers of tattoo ink. The nanochip implant may reside inside the body, and the mark, the tattoo part with the 666 number or whatever numerical code they use with the 666, it may simply be a sign that you have. In other words, the tattoo, whether it's on the forehead or the right hand, that may simply be a symbol indicating that you have the microscopic nanochip implant in you. And so this entire beast system, the Antichrist system, will be built around this mark of the beast system. Wake up and smell the coffee. So what is your job? What is my job? Well, our job, quite frankly, to be really blunt about it and biblical, is to stop running around like Chicken Little who said, as he was running around in a state of hysteria, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. To have the mind of Christ, to be filled with the Spirit, to renew our minds with the Word of God, and to develop, through an act of our will, develop a certain level of intelligence and perception so that we can be used by God to deal with this. Now, there will be a time when it's too late. I got that. That time has not yet arrived. That time has not yet arrived. So let's be wise, not foolish. Let's, as Jesus said, let's occupy the land. For us, it's America, until he comes. That's not doing away with Bible prophecy. Well, how did you get that idea? Unless you're standing upside down on your head. That's not doing away with Bible prophecy. First of all, you couldn't do away with Bible prophecy, even if you wanted to, because God is the sovereign king, the absolute ruler. You aren't, and I'm not. So don't worry about doing away with Bible prophecy. God is in control, not you and not me. You're not going to do away with Bible prophecy. However, it would be beneficial if you went along with what Bible prophecy actually said and did what Bible prophecy actually told you to do. Namely, until that time period, you're to be occupying the land until he comes. So you speak out about these things in an intelligent, spirit-filled, knowledgeable way. And you make a difference in the world. Because if you don't bother to make a difference in this world while you're here and you still have the opportunity to do so, then don't blame God if hell on earth erupts with a violence that's staggering and you and I lose all of our freedoms. That may not have been the will of God. God may have wanted his people to truly occupy until he comes, spread revival, and continue doing so until he comes. And we don't know the timetable. So quit prematurely guessing. There were a lot of men who were great men of God that I got to develop close relationships with before they died. And the one thing and I respected these men. They were great men of God. And again, I had the opportunity to get to know them, have lunch with them, develop a relationship with them. And that was people like Chuck Smith, pastor of Calvary Chapel Church, Hal Lindsey. There were a bunch of Chuck Misler, Tim LaHaye, and a number of other people that were strong promoters of the pre-tribulation rapture. And they all had a positive influence in my life. Now, here's the thing. All of these people died. Some of them, I don't think it takes away from their legacy, but it does. It just shows you that they're human, like I am and you are. Some of these great men of God publicly stated that Jesus Christ was coming back on such and such a date, and they gave out the date and they gave out the time when Jesus Christ was coming. Well, guess what? Jesus Christ obviously did not come on those dates that they named. And the Lord took them home when they passed on from this world to the next world, heaven, before Jesus Christ returned. So they were wrong. When they projected a date, they were wrong. Now, that's somewhat of an embarrassment to whatever degree. It doesn't detract in my mind from the powerful things they did through their ministry, but they were wrong. And I don't want to make the same mistake. I want to learn from the mistakes of others, as you do too. All right, this is the Paul McGUIRE Report. I'm Paul McGUIRE. We need your help in moving forward in the new year to gain and occupy the land until Christ comes. And that means revving up our outreach in a significant way and doing things through Paradise Mountain Church, Paul McGUIRE Ministries, that we need to do, but it requires donations, contributions, and finances so that we can do it, because operating ministries like this requires money. So go to the website, paulmcguire.us, ask the Lord what you can do, help us spread the word far and wide, and you can check all of this out at paulmcguire.us. We'll be back in just a moment.